We have the supreme pleasure of being joined by not only, I wouldn't even call him a guest, I call him a brother, a family member of the Spoken Podcast, one of my best friends, a guy I respect vehemently, and was very excited to get him on the show. We actually scheduled this 2-3 weeks ago, I believe, and I think despite how bad things have gone, both on and off the field, which we will address, I think this is the perfect week to have her on the show. So let's give it up for Mr. Shaggy Shane Williams.
What's going on, man?
What's up, man? How you doing today?
Hey, man, things are going good, man. As good as it can be. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me, Eddie?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Trevor?
Gotcha.
Then that means the world can hear me as well. Thank you for having me on the show. There's a lot to say, but there's a lot to dissect. There's a lot to digest, but once it gets through our digestive package, we have to ask ourselves, how will it exit?
Yeah, no shit, literally. Let's start something here, Shaggy, because I know you said, I believe a week ago, or at least a few days ago, that you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you brought up a theory, a take, on Tyrann Mathieu and his future with the Chiefs. Now, there are some recent developments that came up on social media, and we know that Tyrann's very vocal on social media, but now it's not just him. It's also starting linebacker Anthony Hitchens that is being rather vocal. We haven't even broke it down yet on the show, but I know you had a theory, I know you had a take about what the Chiefs could potentially do if they continue to struggle this season with Tyrann Mathieu. I want to give you the platform so you can tell the listening and the viewing audience what your take is, and if the recent developments that took place on Instagram last night have changed or strengthened your take.
I wouldn't say it was a take per se. It's just the way you want to look at things for the Kansas City Chiefs long term. And I appreciate you, Lance, giving me the platform because I have a lot to say. Earlier in the week, I put out there, and of course I did a couple weeks ago, but Tuesday, I said the Chiefs have a chance with the trade deadline. Would you entertain the thought, I said this to the Chiefs fans, of trading Tyrann Mathieu for a draft pick if this team continues to struggle on trade deadline? And it went about 70-30 against it, and I understand that. At that time, Chiefs fans were against it. Say, hell no, we're not trading Tyrann Mathieu. Give him his money. But there were some saying, the way this team's playing, and if we're going to evolve for years down the line, then you have to entertain the thought of trading Tyrann Mathieu. It was just something to put out there. I wasn't hating on Tyrann Mathieu per se, but I was just putting it out there, would you fans be interested? But like I said, I put it out there earlier in the week. Then the events unfolded last night on Instagram where Chiefs fans were talking on a group, just putting it out there that these players are falling short. Tyrann Mathieu and Anthony Hitchens or any other Chiefs player was not tagged. They were not tagged in this post. They were not tagged at all. It was just a bunch of Chiefs fans talking on a Friday. Hey, what do you think about this? Does this player live up to that example? Or this player living up to that contract? It's what we do as fans. It's what we have done before the internet. It's what we have done for years and years. You debate when your team struggles. Is this player living up to that? And is this player worth playing? And then as we all know, Anthony Hitchens and Tyrann Mathieu jumped in, showing their lack of leadership, showing their lack of dedication to the Chiefs, showing their lack of sincerity to the Chiefs kingdom, to Chiefs fans, man. You do not slam your fans. You do not. When you're not playing at a high level, you just simply do not slam your fans. Throughout the years, I'm going to be 52 in 3 weeks. Throughout the years, there's always been Chiefs players getting slammed, whether it was sports talk, sports radio, sports, and then the internet came, and this is what we do. We talk, hey, this player isn't doing good, this player isn't doing that. And there's been some real heat on some cats. There's been some real heat on some Chiefs players, and justifiably so. We came down hard on Matt Castle. We had a flyer before him because we wanted not only Matt Castle to leave, we wanted the culture to leave because we weren't winning. But did Matt Castle say anything? Did he tweet anything? Nope. Alex Smith, the same heat. We came down hard on him when he wasn't living up, when we were getting first-round playoff buys because Eric Berry was carrying our ass. and Alex Smith was falling short. Chiefs Kingdom came down hard on Alex Smith. Did Alex Smith say anything? Nope. But let me take it further than just the Chiefs and their fan base. When Colin Kaepernick stood up for social injustice and took a knee, and he was freaking drilled by millions of people worldwide, not only in the United States. Did Colin Kaepernick get on there and say, this is unjustified? You guys are just fair weather? Nope. You know why? Because Colin Kaepernick, Matt Castle, and Alex Smith are all leaders. Whether we're talking about sports or social injustice or what have you. My point is, when tiny little Chiefs Kingdom starts questioning the way these players play on the field and they're not living up to their standards, we get that right. We get that right. You know why? Because we're fans and we care about our team. But to the point of trading Tyrann Mathieu that I asked earlier in the week, I think it has to happen. It has to happen by next Tuesday. Is he going to come to play next Monday with the right frame of mind, knowing that the majority of Chiefs Kingdom freaking hate him now and pissed off and want him off the team? I don't care. He's going to give some sorry ass apology either today or tomorrow, saying, I wasn't coming down hard. I was just being myself. That's what I do. Tyrann Mathieu's not right in the head. How many times is he? And I don't mean that because there's a lot of people with really mental issues out there in the world that, honest to God, need help. But there's something not right with Tyrann Mathieu. The fact that he gives a crap that 8 minutes after the Titans game ends, 8 minutes, the dude hadn't even showered yet. He runs into the locker room and sees what Chiefs fans are saying to him about him on Twitter, and he starts getting on there. The leaders need to stand up for this team, and this is desperate. This is real shit. The leaders of this team need to get together and say, right now, they're having practice today because it's a Monday game, so they have practice 2 days before the game actually happens. When the team gets together, they have to recognize, hey, Tyrann Mathieu and Anthony Hitchens aren't mentally stable enough to be on this, to be playing. I know Hitchens ain't playing because he's injured, but Tyrann Mathieu needs to be replaced by Armani Watts like ASAP. You may say, well, on the field, Watts isn't as good as Tyrann Mathieu, but Tyrann Mathieu isn't mentally stable to go out and play football. When you care more about what your fans are saying about you on Instagram and Twitter, then your freaking mind is in the right place.
And that's his problem. That's his problem. He's more fixated and focused on what people are saying, and he calls himself a whole general. Well, I would have a hard time believing, Eddie, you were in the military, maybe you can attest to this, I would have a hard time believing that a whole general would be worried of what a civilian's saying. I don't think they care. I think they're focused on protecting the country, just like Tyrann Mathieu should probably be more focused on protecting this team and helping this team win games. I'm not saying you can't care or you shouldn't care, but you can't let the noise affect you to this degree, to this level. That's just when it's unhealthy, and I'm with you on that. He's not stable enough to handle social media and the pressures that come with it. I want to move to more of a football side of things because I started the show off basically addressing my levels and where I placed my blame to why the Chiefs are 3-4 and essentially have failed to this point. And I started by criticizing Patrick Mahomes because he does deserve a certain level of it. I don't think it's a lot, but I think it's enough to at least address. Then I went to Steve Spagnuolo and his defense and their lack of adjustments and how they have simply failed year 3. And I think there are some legitimate concerns of whether Steve Spagnuolo is the long-term answer at defensive coordinator. Then I addressed Brett Veach and some of the mistakes he's made with overspending on some guys who are now either not on the team at all or guys that are just basically raking in the cash and not putting in a real contribution on the field. And then I ended it with Andy Reid and how I believe with some of the things that may be going on in his personal life, we have to now entertain that theory or that belief. And I think that the lack of adjustments he's having to the cover 2 defenses that defenses are essentially running against his offense every single week are reasons why I think this team has ultimately failed to this point. What are your thoughts on that, Shaggy?
We've seen Andy Reid's team slump and get on streaks his entire tenure as a Kansas City Chiefs head coach. And everything you said was spot on at the beginning of the show. And people call it the Super Bowl hangover. People call it, it's unfair to ask this team to play at this level for this amount of time. If the mistakes weren't so god-awful, you could, if the mistakes were like, they simply were, Patrick Mahomes stepped in the pocket and tried to force it into double coverage. It's not his fault. He was trying to make a play. The criticism on Patrick, I think, is somewhat unfair, just because of the fact that he's trying to pick up the slack for everybody else, and but the defense is obviously slacking. But to the point, the grand scheme of it, in a nutshell, and this is what's the most baffling stat of them all. If the Chiefs don't turn the ball over against Baltimore at the end of the game, and if the Chiefs don't start the Chargers game week 3 with 3 straight turnovers, then we're sitting here 5-2, tied with the Raiders, wanting to know what happened in Tennessee and why we can't beat Buffalo. But since we had those turnovers, then you're looking at, well, we're just a bad team. And to that, for some reason, when teams are known for turning the ball over, they turn it over. Not just 2 weeks in a row, not 3 weeks in a row. And in my 44 years of watching football since 1977, whenever they put the stat on the TV, this team leads the NFL in turnovers. By golly, they will just keep turning it over. It takes weeks to stop turning it over. And if they wouldn't turn it over, they would be 5-2, but they would still have these issues on defense. Sometimes the defense, you would hope that the defense would be able to step up and address those turnovers by holding the opposing offense. But in the grand scheme of things, to answer that question, Lance, in totality, it falls at the feet of Andy Reid. And Andy Reid's the first ballot Hall of Famer. What he done from 2013 to 2020 deserves props. It solidified his Hall of Fame it solidified him as a Hall of Famer. What he has done, he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But there is an erosion from the coaching staff, from Andy Reid on down, that Patrick is feeling. You can tell in his game. He's not comfortable in the pocket. He's not. Me and you sat together for the Sunday night game, and we watched other games where he would just have a clean pocket. He would set. He'd get the ball. He'd look, and it would be clean. He would bounce out, just immediately bounce out. And you'd be thinking, man, if he just – and then when we see the all-22 footage later on in the week, whether it be Seth Kaiser or Nick Jacobs, they would show if he just would have stayed in the pocket, that pass would have opened up, or that second receiver would have been open. There's something in Patrick's head right now that's just telling him to do too much. But the entire thing falls at the feet of Andy Reid, and I think there needs to be – it pains me to say this because I get ripped on social media. There needs to be a complete culture change at the end of this year. I'm not going to ever say fire him, but I would hope that he would at least think about taking a step back, because with Tyrann Mathieu and the Honey Badge, Tyrann Mathieu and Anthony Hitchens' talk on Instagram last night showed that this locker room is broke up.
Yeah, because it really did remind me, and I don't want to sound extreme here, but it did remind me of when Eric Winston went out and generalized the Chiefs fans like that. It really did remind me of that, and that to me was the end of that era. We already knew that era was coming to a close, but when Eric Winston was coming out and literally generalizing Chiefs fans and saying things because of a few, that's when I felt like it was a real problem. And I've always been one that's believed that the Chiefs were going to pay Tyrann Mathieu, that he was going to be a long-term solution. I was in support of it because the guy's a damn good football player. But when things like that are being said, where he's saying that people are trash, when he's saying that, just calling names, calling Chiefs fans names, generalizing a fan base, calling us toxic, that's when I think that the line is crossed. And if Andy Reid is going to reestablish himself in the confidence of Chiefs fans to get this thing turned around, that is something he's going to have to address and address it directly, not through channels, directly with Tyrann Mathieu. And I don't know how he's going to do that. I really don't. I can have my theories. I'm sure you do too. But I just don't see how it's going to be repaired this season. I hope I'm wrong. And speaking of the rest of the season, just a couple more questions for you here, Shaggy. The Chiefs have a game in front of them on Monday Night Football that is very winnable. I believe they're a 10-point favorite to this point, and they should be. Regardless of what the record is, they are clearly a better team than the Giants, and a lot of teams are. But even if the Chiefs were to go out here and blow out the Giants, and we're going to give our preview on this game in a little bit, but just to jump ahead and get your thoughts, even if the Chiefs were to blow the Giants out in this game, does it give you any swing of confidence that this team's going to turn it around, or do you feel that this is what should happen, and it's just another NFC East team that the Chiefs beat up on.
Like I said in my post yesterday, the Chiefs can go out and stop the Giants, just like they did 6 years ago. 6 years ago, on November 1st, 2015, the Chiefs went to the United Kingdom, or to Britain, to play the Lions at their record of 2-5 after 7 games. They just beat the Steelers and Landry Jones, a third-string quarterback, and they went out and beat a bad team, and they beat them up good. It lit the spark that ended up putting on a 10-game winning streak to be successful. But we all know that defense was stacked with number 1 draft picks and good draft picks by 3 different general managers. I don't need to name the names. I said them on my post of those players. That defense only gave up 15.8 yards per game during that stretch. The Chiefs should win, but going back to what I also want to talk about, Orlando Brown is not living up to the first-round trade. Tim Grunhard, major props to him, on 810 WHB, talked about Orlando Brown's footwork. He's just his feet, his footwork on pass rushers with speed force Patrick Mahomes out of the pocket. And when Patrick Mahomes gets out of the pocket to make a play, Orlando Brown is unable to hold that rusher. So that rusher is always at Patrick Mahomes' back when he's trying to make plays out of the pocket. Where Orlando Brown is a good bull rushing left tackle, Eric Fisher was a better left tackle when he was healthy, when plays were breaking down. When plays were breaking down and Patrick Mahomes was out of the pocket, Eric Fisher and the other right tackle, Schwartz, was able to hold that pass rusher so Patrick can make plays. Those plays aren't getting made now because Orlando Brown's got poor footwork at this time. Can Orlando Brown turn it around? God, I hope so, because we invested in a number 1 draft pick. But if not, we got another player we need to draft, another part of the culture that needs to be changed.
It's actually where I wanted to kind of tail in this entire conversation, because Shaggy, you bring up the past to talk about the present, but what about the future here? Because as this team is currently constructed, you talked about an overhaul, you talked about a cultural change. Man, I feel like the culture is predicated on coaching. So how much longer do you give this current coaching staff until you believe Clark Hunt, who was aggressive, 9 years ago by getting Andy Reid in town, how much do you think that needs to be replicated by Clark Hunt? How much responsibility Clark Hunt have if it continues to go down this route? Because I think you would agree with me, no one is too important to waste Patrick Mahomes' prime years. No one is, including Andy Reid, including anybody. Clark Hunt's got to do whatever it takes to give Patrick Mahomes as much as he needs to win Super Bowls. And one of my biggest theories is I just think it's simple. The Chiefs need to have more of a balanced attack on offense, because we know as long as this team is great, it's going to be the offense leading the way. Well, I think that you got to have more of a balanced attack. I know our producer and our dear friend Clay Wendler is against the idea that we need to change things on offense. I stand strong on that side. I don't know where you stand on that exclusively, but I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
We have to continue to evolve, because 31 other National Football League teams have done their homework. They say, how are we going to keep up with the Chiefs? What do we have to do to stop the Chiefs? How do we get on the same level as the Chiefs? They looked at us and was the measuring stick on what to do to stop us, be like us, and beat us. The Chiefs have to evolve. If this Chiefs team just looks like crap the rest of the year, and we finish 7-10, 6-11, and maybe we could talk about this on your off-season show, but I want to address it now because we have to think outside of the box right now because of where we stand for the locker room is in a situation. We have to think, how do we evolve? How do we evolve? Who do we trade? What do we do to get multiple draft picks? Because you said on your opening, Lance, and it's on point. The Chiefs moving forward from 2022 on need to build through the draft. There can't be, we need to trade a number 1 draft pick for this player or that player, because me and you've had debates about Frank Clark, and we don't need to do that now unless you want to. I'm here all day. But to the point of where we need to go moving forward is we need to build through the draft. Tyreek Hill is going to be 28 years old next March. Hear me out, Chiefs Kingdom, before you freak out. Tyreek Hill is going to be 28 years old next March. He's going to demand top dollar contract. And you know what? I don't blame him. Tyreek Hill deserves to be the 5-year guaranteed fat contract because Tyreek Hill has busted his ass. He's busted his ass to warrant that contract. And at 28, Tyreek Hill deserves it. But what do we have to do? We got to think, okay, well, we never really got any defensive ends because John Dorsey took Tano Passanio over Alvin Kamara. And then in the next year, Brett Veach took Breland Speaks over anybody good. So we didn't address the defensive end. We just traded our number one draft pick the last year for a left tackle that doesn't look like it's going to be the left tackle. We're going to ditch our dumbass freaking safety who wants to talk shit on Chiefs fans. So he's going to be gone. There's a whole slew of changes that need to change. And that is the culture. The culture changes. And when the culture changes, you need to evaluate your team from top to bottom. And if you can get a top 5 draft pick for Tyreek Hill, let's say the Chiefs finish 6-11 and we were drafting at 12. Let's say we can trade Tyreek Hill and get a first-round draft pick from a team as well as a high third or a second, because Tyreek Hill is worth a first and a second-round draft pick. If you can get 2 firsts, if you have 2 firsts and 2 along with the other moves you can make, then you can build your team. People think, hold on, Shaggy, we don't want to trade Tyreek Hill. You got to let it go. Because how much longer is Tyreek Hill going to play at this level? And how good is the Chiefs going to be if they give Tyreek Hill the fattest contract? What holes are they leaving open where they can draft? Because we're talking about draft now, Lance. They got Sammy Watkins, Frank Clark, and all these other Tyrann Mathieu, all these players in free agency, and they made trades and whatnot. Let's build our own team. Let's build the core of these guys. Because when we were talking to the defense in 2015, how they lit that spark, they were all drafted by freaking the Chiefs. All of them. Dontari Poe, Eric Berry, Derek Johnson, Marcus Peters, D Ford, Justin Houston, Tamba Ali. These cats were all our guys. Let's get our own guys. I know it sucks to think about trading Tyreek Hill, but if you can get fat stacked draft picks to draft, if you can get 2 draft picks in the first 12 picks, I'm on board. And if it means, hey, I don't know if I trust Brett Veach to make these trades, and you know I've been in Brett Veach's corner since we met him in training camp 2017. If it means I don't trust Brett Veach to make these trades, now that we're going to trade hypothetically Tyreek Hill, you get another general manager in here. You get another general manager and says, I'm going to get you the damn good players now that you have 4 draft picks within the first 40. You got 4 draft picks in the first 40. You're going to get your left tackle, your defensive end, running back, or not a running back. Just, you're going to build the team, the culture. Because long story short, and I know I'm rambling, but this needs to be said, the culture needs to change. Patrick Mahomes is going to be here for the next 15 years. He wants to play. The kid has heart. The kid loves Kansas City. Get him a running game. Get him a freaking swarming defense, and draft with it. Draft with it, man. I know it's tough to think about trading Tyreek Hill, but like I said, you're going to be in that situation, and we're going to be asking ourselves, is the culture changed? Do we want to give Tyreek Hill this massive contract that he deserves at the age of 28? Brett Veach or the next general manager or the next coaching staff or the next everything is going to have to evaluate how are the Chiefs going to do moving forward, because 31 other National Football League teams have evolved. How did the Chiefs evolve? We can't stay status quo. We have to evolve. We have to grow. And if you're not growing, just like, yeah, we're going to give Tyreek Hill a massive contract. We're going to give Orlando Brown a massive contract. We got Chris Jones a massive contract. There's these holes otherwhere because we didn't draft. We freaking whiffed, like I said, on Tano Passanio and Breland Speaks and possibly Orlando Brown. There's a lot of holes that needs to be addressed, and we have to evolve and think long term. Are we thinking long term when we say give Tyreek Hill a massive contract?
Yeah, the Chiefs have built just like the Rams have over the last couple of years. The only difference is the Rams have Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald to build their defense around. I mean, it's a different equation. And when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and the building the run game, Shane, I couldn't agree more, because there's no coincidence that Patrick Mahomes wanted Clyde Edwards-Helaire first in the draft. after knowing what it was like to have Kareem Hunt in the backfield. I mean, look how much easier and unstoppable that offense looked when they had a Kareem Hunt. And look what they do and look how awesome this offense looks when they're throwing the ball to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. When you have a versatile running back, it opens up this offense and alleviates a lot of pressure from Patrick Mahomes having to make these big plays each and every drive where he feels like he has to score 2 touchdowns on one single drive. I get that it's on Patrick Mahomes to play better and make better decisions, but this offense has got to set him up a little bit better than what they have to this point. And I'm 100% with you that this team needs to build through the draft to this point, because although it has brought success over the last 2 years with getting the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, we have to also remember that the core players and pieces on this team that they have built success around were guys that were here before Brett Veach was even the GM. John Dorsey drafted a lot of these guys, signed a lot of these guys, traded for a lot of these guys that are still contributing to this team. That doesn't last forever. In fact, it's lasted longer than most people expected to have Travis Kelce and these guys still out here performing at such a high level. That doesn't usually happen. You can't keep resting on your laurels. You need to build and develop your own homegrown guys. I couldn't agree more, man. So before we get out of here, I want you to say whatever you need to say, get whatever you need to get off your chest right now, because I know you got a lot, and let the people know where they can follow you on social media.
You can follow me on social media at YouTube. Just hit Shaggy Shane Chiefs, and Facebook Shane Williams, and Twitter at Shaggy Shane KC. I don't tweet as much, but Chiefs fans, enjoy this team. Enjoy having a great quarterback. People may think that we are negative, you and me, but we just call it like we see it. But the icing on the cake was last night. That hurt. That hurt when you got two Chiefs players calling out the Chiefs fans, because we're a small sample size on in the world of all its problems and issues. We cheer for players just because it's our outlet, and they need to be leaders and professionals. Lance, I hope that we can I hope we turn it around. I would love to see a 2015 spark, the same spark that, brought out a lot of fun that season. We ended up winning a playoff game for the first time in 30 years. And the question I have for you, Lance, that I want to ask before I go is, do you understand the changing of the culture? Do you understand my point? And do you agree with what I'm saying? Would you entertain the thought of trading Tyreek Hill for a first and second round draft pick if you could get 2 top 5 picks in the first and second round?
I would be more hesitant to trading Tyreek Hill than a Tyrann Mathieu, only because I believe that Tyreek Hill, even if he loses a step to his game, I still think he's going to be one of the 5 fastest receivers in the league, and his game continues to develop and evolve. And over the last 3 years, you can make the case he's been the most productive wide receiver in football. And the idea of taking that away from Patrick Mahomes, because as much as we sit here and talk about how we need to give him an adequate run game to alleviate some of that pressure, I have a hard time believing it does anything but add more pressure to Patrick Mahomes when you take away his biggest game-breaking asset, even still while he's in his early or late 20s. And we've had BJ Kissel on the show. Something he said that sticks with me to this day, and I will continue to hammer it home until a new regime comes into Kansas City and maybe they have a different methodology or mentality. Was he said that the Chiefs don't often like giving contracts to guys that are 28 or older, but there are exceptions. We saw them do this with Travis Kelce. We saw them give a contract to a older safety in Tyrann Mathieu. He was turning 27. Tyreek Hill is 100% one of those guys that I think is the exception to the rule. But if they were to trade Tyreek Hill for those types of assets or those picks, my biggest interest would be, can Brett Veach build upon that? Because if the Chiefs were to bring a top-tier pass rusher out of that, we all know that edge rush is more important than wide receiver when you're building an NFL roster. My question, though, is can Brett Veach do that? Because to this point, he hasn't done that. He's gotten some good draft assets and good picks this last draft class with Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Nick Bolton. But it took 3 years for Brett Veach to really show us that he can draft at a high level. So I reserve my right to be concerned about what Brett Veach can do in the draft, and trading Tyreek Hill is a tall ask from fans and Patrick Mahomes, because I have a hard time believing that Patrick Mahomes would be on board with that.
Do you feel the criticism? Let's say we finish 6-11. This is worst case scenario. This is worst case. I know we're optimistic about the Chiefs being great, and they can get a spark. But worst case scenario, who's going to hold who accountable more? I believe that Clark Hunt stays out and lets Brett Veach and Andy Reid run this bad boy. Andy Reid and Brett Veach run it. If it comes question that Brett Veach needs to go, or if it comes question that Andy Reid's lost his ability to keep the locker room, who's going to blink first? Is Brett Veach going to say something to Andy Reid like, hey, I'm going to hold you accountable if you're coaching? Or do you think Andy Reid will say, hey, Brett Veach, you gave me these guys? Because we showed in June of 2017, where we're getting ready for that 2017 season, Andy Reid didn't hesitate to say goodbye to John Dorsey. We know that Brett Veach is connected to the hip at Andy Reid. Do you think Andy Reid will dismiss Brett Veach if he feels like his draft pick and his signings are poor?
I don't. This has been my biggest criticism with Andy Reid.
That's the problem we're in.
Is that he hires his pals, and whether those guys are the right guy for the job or not, they're there, and he doesn't move off of them. We saw this fan base literally demand Bob Sutton to get fired for that to happen. They had to have a universal collapse in overtime against the Patriots in the AFC Championship for that to take place. So no, I think even if the Chiefs, worst case scenarios, finish 6-11, whatever they're, basically just fail completely, even if that was to happen, I have a hard time believing that Andy Reid would make that type of decision. I think he believes in his guys to a fault, and that could be even his undoing, which is why I bring up Clark Hunt, because I believe that Clark Hunt would have to step in order for things to be resolved, because I don't think Andy Reid's the type that's going to say, I need to get out ahead of this. He's very reactionary. He's not a guy that sees it ahead of time and gets in front of it and is proactive. A lot of times he's reactive. In fact, almost all the time he's reactive. So that's my biggest concern. That's my biggest issue, and that's why I'm anticipating that no real changes are going to be made in order for the culture to get better, unless it's somebody that is very valuable to this team in a way that we can only give them credit for what they've done the previous 3 years. Now looking at this team honestly as what they are now, I would say that it have to be somebody high up to be taken down in order for the culture to really change. But we're still not early in the season, but early enough to sit here and speculate on what's going to happen. But Shane, we're going to have you back on the show before the season's over, man. So we got to get your thoughts. Maybe even during the bye week, we'll have you back on to talk more about this.
Well, like I said, we're evaluating 7 games. Yeah. 7 games. We're evaluating a team that's 3-4, and could have been 5-2, but we also reality could have been 1-6. That Cleveland game we could have lost, or we could have lost to Philadelphia. So it's kind of odd. We're in a situation where we could be 5-2, we could be 1-6. We're at 3-4. November 1st, football begins on Monday if you're Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid has shown he did it in 2015, and his teams were streaky in 2016, and of course 2019. He can get a streak. They have the locker room to make it happen. It's just right now, the Instagram post is really from Matthew and Hitchens is leaving a bad taste in their mouths. But it begins against a bad football team Monday night. I love you, Lance. I love you, Eddie and Trevor. Guys, keep kicking ass. Until next week on the Shaggy, Shane, Casey Chiefs Show. Go Chiefs, brothers.
Yes, sir. We love you too, man. We always appreciate you coming on here, dropping facts, giving us the takes, man, being bold with what you believe in. I know you get flack, I get flack, but unlike Tyrann Mathieu, you and I can hang tough. So we really appreciate it, and we love you, bro.
See you guys.